Alright, so this one's been one that's been kicked around for a little bit. I think the initial plan was just to amuse myself. I was going to do it around Valentine's Day, but I opted to do the Linklater before movies instead. But and the original choice was going to be The Crush, the the Alicia Silverstone movie. But then I realized that that's not really a movie I'd ever want to revisit. As amusing as it is, like the one thing I remember about it is the climax when they're on like the merry-go-round and Carrie Elwes punches her in the face and she flies across the room. I didn't really think that was worth revisiting, and then I remembered that Swimfan existed. Something I don't think many people have done in the last 15 years, but yes, if you come across this, you remember now. But I think we're going to start back in the 90s. They're both... obviously, the thing they both have in common here is they both take this approach of this... when Brian Grazer went to Universal with Fear, basically he just wanted to make a teen version of Fatal Attraction. That's pretty much what he said, to my understanding. And then that obviously has been... it's been a trend for a while, like even predating Fatal Attraction, like going back at least as far as... Play Misty for Me, the first movie that Eastwood directed. But at some point, maybe Fear started it, maybe not, I don't remember for sure, but because there's so many of them. But at some point, doing this Fatal Attraction thing in the teen area became extremely popular, and a lot of the times they hardly succeeded. Every now and then a Fear came along, but for the most part, and there's still a lot of people that don't care for Fear. I don't think it wasn't even a critical success by any means, but it did manage to find an audience. And while it is very much a product of the '90s, and Swimfan's very much a product of the early 2000s, making them both fun to go back on, and so. I guess we'll just see if maybe they're not as dated as you may think, or maybe they totally are. But to start with Fear, it's the thing about Fear for starters was our star is Mark Wahlberg, who at the time was pretty much mostly only known for Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. At this point, movie-wise, I think he had like Renaissance Man and The Basketball Diaries, none of which he was a main focus of. So he was brought forth here. This is probably his first starring role, I'm thinking, if not very close to it. And there's something that he actually, because you think, the guy from Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch, and just Calvin Klein and all that, you would think, we know that he's gone on to be a pretty great actor. He's a bit kind of in the same territory a lot, but when he gets the chance to shine, he absolutely will. And here, there's actually shades of that, though at the time I can only imagine what this looked like. I believe one of the reviews actually said that Mr. Wahlberg could benefit from diction lessons, I believe is what it said. But honestly, the way he plays this part is... I like the fact that there's kind of two sides to it, depending on the audience member, for the most part. And that is, he's the guy where, when she first sees him, we have a look at him, and first off, we know what the movie's about, so immediately we know what's to come. But if you're kind of looking from the outside... He walks up to her, and he's got this he's got the very soft-spoken voice. There's almost something feminine about it. He's so soft-spoken and so gentle with how he is, and just the way he approaches her. And that he should be unassuming from the start. That's kind of the whole point of this particular genre, is they start off and they seem totally innocent, and you'd think, if you don't know what it is going in, you could totally buy, hey, this must be a love story, and go from there. And it's only when they start to turn that you start to realize, oh, maybe this person's not trustworthy. But when you know the genre well enough, and depending on how the actor plays it, you can pretty much, a lot of the time, almost instantly say, yep, I have no idea how the characters do not see immediately that this person is a complete psychopath. And I do buy that, because I don't necessarily think it's that William Peterson's character is just like, you know, the old dad character where no matter who, David could have been anybody, he could have actually ended up being a pretty nice guy, and Steve still would have kind of been the overprotective dad. But I don't know, I think a lot of the David versus Steve battle here comes from the fact that Steve kind of picked up on it pretty fast, and more or less immediately. I mean, he's doing the whole helpful thing, like Amy Roman warms up to him really quickly. He's telling her how to do the plants and stuff. Obviously, Melissa Milano is all over him from the get-go. But still, we as an audience are pretty much there with Steve. And it's also really good in that sense that they make him such a big player in this. Because usually it would be probably Nicole, you know, loves him, then slowly starts to kind of realize what's going on, then gradually gets to that point where she definitely realizes it. It's the two of them going at it. But the thing is she's always on that fence because she's so impressionable one way or the other. I really like the way we take this approach, that it's basically a battle between him and Steve through the whole movie. And it's not necessarily just one of those things where, oh, he's the overprotective dad, and every now and then he comes in to scold her, and then he just leaves when he's done giving a lesson or whatever. But no, Steve is such a prominent character, and this movie really is about the battle between the two of them, to the point that this whole war that starts between them in more of the second half is what escalates us to the climax. She's really just, Nicole is just kind of a pawn in the middle of this, that's just kind of fueling both their sides, but it's really all about the two of them, which I thought was a very interesting approach for them to take, which it could be... I do get that Steve's character could really just come off as any other dad character in a scenario like this, all the way up to he abandons the family trips for work and all that, but William Peterson is such a magnetic actor and always has been, that I feel like he really brought something to this part that actually takes this... It's a big portion of what makes this movie more above the others in this genre. and there's even the... I kind of wish they'd explored a little more, because they could make his character even stronger. They had that whole thing at the beginning when, obviously Toby is not his kid, but he's able to... He's actually able to get Toby to call him Dad because they have that connection. And they kind of make that like it's going to be some big... Like, more scenes between the two of them, I feel like, could have really added something here, too. But maybe, you know, maybe time constraints cut it or something. But yeah, but going on how exactly this builds between David and Nicole's relationship, and how we have to kind of gradually get there because she's not aware that David's a psychopath right from the get-go. And the movie... If the movie's gonna build gradually, it can't necessarily take that stance either. It kind of has to commit to maybe David's just a little, you know, not exactly completely untrustworthy, but just, you know, a young troublemaker. And really to not any extent of that. And I do like the way they kind of draw those lines from the very start and then build up, starting with when they go out on their first date and she's saying, you know, oh, my curfew's at midnight, and he just sets her watch back about half an hour. And that's one of those cases where it's like, you can take it both ways. If you're seeing it from Nicole's stance, you can say, oh no, that could get me in trouble, but it's harmless, you know, it's just time. But then that's also a cue to the audience to kind of say, that's our first clue of, well, that's something an untrustworthy person might do. It could be harmless, it could not be. It could be a clue to something greater. And I kind of like how it's just one of those, it's just small enough to be one or the other for an audience that's waiting for something to happen. So I like that. And then the whole, how these little clues, once again, Steve learns everything very quickly, much quicker than everybody else. Where it's just one line and it's one reading, where David comes in and he's, you know, hanging out in Steve's office or whatever, and Nicole's going to the kitchen, and the way he says, Nicole, get me a Coke, and it's like a barked order and not a, hey, could you get that while you're in there, I could use it. And Steve catches this immediately, and that's the point where it's one line and it seems very mundane, but it gets Steve just enough that this is Steve's turning point to where he never looks back. Like, this... David McCall, you could probably say David McCall might very well be dead right now because of the way he told Nicole to get him a coat, because it all went from there. um, and that's one of those things where the movie explores where it's like, it could just be one thing, like maybe he didn't mean to sound that way when he said it, even though he wasn't even asking. But it just seems like a mundane thing where you could say like, well, that guy's probably an asshole. And just leave it at that. But it's those tiny little clues that get us more and more closer into the direction that we're going. And this is just our starting point. And I really like that one look that Steve gives him when it's like like just by the way he reacts to that line, it's like he knows everything about David now, just based on that one small thing. So I thought that was really well done, actually. And then the way they kind of, and obviously we kind of, you know, when we see where he lives, which is supposed to be like Logan's dad's house, I guess. Fucking creepy ass Logan. And we see that David just lays in his room, and he's got they kind of give us these little hints. Sometimes they're not as subtle as they could be. And by that I mean, when he's laying in bed and he's thinking about, oh, how do I get Nicole back? I'm hurting so much right now. But the way he kind of looks at Nobby, where you kind of, and Nobby kind of gets scared of him, even though he was barking orders at him a second ago, kind of shows you everything. But right next to his bed, I don't know if you saw this, it's his photo booth pictures of Nicole, one of which he sends with the flowers, and then right next to it is his fucking mugshot. Now, granted, of course, it's a clue for the audience. It's like, this dude's been to fucking places. This dude is bad. He's very bad news. But of course, that also leaves an audience member to say, who the fuck, no matter how crazy they are, just leaves their mugshot next to their bed as if it's some great reminder of themselves? I don't know. But I think mainly it's a clue for an audience to say, oh, by the way, he's been locked up. So sometimes there's stuff like that, but I also like the way James Foley handles this really well, who had found success with like Glengarry Glen Ross about 4 years before this, long before he did 50 Shades Darker, but never mind. So there are two sexual scenes that we see between David and Nicole, and I like the different ways that they're handled, because by the time it gets to the actual sex of their relationship, we are a bit more uncomfortable with David than we were before. So when we actually start, the first thing that happens, obviously, is the roller coaster. And the way this roller coaster scene is done is it's very, very steamy and very kind of... There's a romanticism about it, regardless of how dirty the scene is. But it's still something it's really portrayed, and you could see it as almost like, this could honestly have happened in a normal R-rated romance movie. But then we get to the sex scene where he comes in the house. Now, mind you, he has been given the code, so technically he's invited in. But still, the way they play up from when he enters the house to when he gets up to her room to the scene itself, the way, I don't know if it's the way it's shot in the dark, or if it's Carter Burwell's score kind of just lingering in there, but there's suddenly something very... This scene plays up much more in a sinister fashion than the roller coaster scene did. And I kind of like how... And it's also kind of a more... Because it's definitely more of a thing, whereas at the roller coaster, he's just kind of giving her, hey, here's a little taste of a sexual experience. The scene that's played up in a sinister way is like taking her virginity, taking her innocence, and they treat it as a much bigger deal and much more of just a really evil thing that he's doing in this moment. So I really like the way those scenes are totally different from each other to kind of display that. It's really surprising when you look back on it just how much, how well made this movie is. I know it's just some 90s teen thriller to a lot of people, but really it's like, it's a pretty well made movie, and a really good representation of the genre it was trying to kind of reinvigorate. Like there is, as far as technical aspects go, I really like, this movie actually has a really nice use of its widescreen. Because it's like the setting itself, the house with the water and on the rocks and all that, is a really nice setting for all this stuff. But then there's stuff like the way they use it the very first time we see David, like in the first 5 minutes, when Nicole and Alyssa Milano go to that bar, and we see Logan and the other dudes playing pool, but every time we get a shot of Logan, it's this full wide shot where everybody's over here and there's just nothing over here. And it kind of gives you that presence where you know you're expecting another person that's going to be a big deal in this story. But they just leave this half of the screen open as we anticipate that. And then finally, after like 3 cuts back to it, David walks into it. I thought that was a really nice use of the widescreen there. And then there is, like I was talking about with Carter Burwell's score, who we all know is just an incredible composer. It's still mind-boggling. His first Oscar nomination was only for Carol a couple of years ago. But what he brings here is, what I really like here is it's not necessarily what he's doing, because it's a score that's very of its era, and it's very much, it's familiar territory in the genre, like how it's kind of that, underlying scratchiness that's, unsettling in a way, that it kind of builds and builds. But the way it's used where, obviously this is a movie that's widely known for its soundtrack, like the songs on it, and that's mostly in the first half when it's basically like a teenage love story before we get to the more thrillery aspects of it. But still, apart from the opening, which is really nice, which is when Steve's taking his run, but after that opening, the score is very, very underlying, almost like non-existent. And as we get closer, when we get to the second half, and when we get closer and closer to all the big stuff, it really kind of starts to take over. It takes over the soundtrack and the songs and all that, and becomes its own thing. Like I said, it's really less what it sounds like and more just the way it's utilized throughout the movie that I find really effective. And the editing too, where it's there are some times where it might feel a little too much, or it might seem a bit like, I don't know. What I really appreciated was it's very cut to the chase editing. Like, it really feels like this movie was really, like, there probably could have been some fat to this movie that was really, really trimmed out in post, which I really appreciate. But there are some moments where it's like, it kind of feels like there are some scenes, particularly with Steve at work. It feels like they had a lot of scenes of Steve at work, but they didn't really know where to put them. So they just kind of threw them into random places throughout the movie. And sometimes that can be a little jarring, but for the most part, I really like how everything is very kind of straightforward. Even with stuff like, it maybe seems like overkill, like when Steve's on the phone with, I think, his wife, and he's talking about how, this isn't just some girl, this is his daughter. And when he goes to hang up the phone, it's a separate cut, even though the camera didn't really move. But there's something that really kind of just adds a straightforwardness to the movie that makes it feel like it keeps going and going. So I thought that was really well done. And even despite, pacing itself in the first half, which is what these movies really are. That's how you build their tension. If they're gonna jump too much into it really quickly, all your suspense is gone, no matter how much you already know where it's headed. So yeah, I haven't talked much about Reese, but do I really need to? I mean, if you're familiar enough with me, you know that Reese could have played Lisa in The Room, and I would have praised her for it probably. The only thing I feel like Reese Witherspoon does here that doesn't quite ring true is her reaction to Gary's death. This is like her best friend, and her best guy friend, and he's always there, and she freaks the fuck out when David beats the shit out of him. Like, it's the thing that drives David away. I mean, it's like it traumatizes her. And then, I mean, you could chalk it up to shock or whatever, but I mean, Alyssa Milano comes over and she's like, Gary's dead, somebody beat him to death. And we get one shot of Nicole, like, going, oh, and then running her fingers through her hair. It's kind of like, huh, I didn't know we were that far into the plot already, is all she has to say about this. And then it's never brought up again. Poor Gary. He was such a nice guy, too. He didn't hurt anybody. And yeah, Alyssa Milano's character is very interesting in this, too. So much to the point that no matter how many times I've seen this movie, I still don't know how to take her. Because she's trouble. I don't think the movie stresses enough how much trouble she is. Because there is obviously a turning point with her character where Nicole realizes there's bad stuff going on here, but it's only when she catches David forcing himself on her. And that's kind of... Sure, that's an interesting reaction for Nicole to have, because it's very clear that he's forcing this entirely. But the thing is kind of this whole situation is because of her. Because it was her idea to say, you know, like, hey, let's go out and let's do, you know, let's get into dangerous stuff. And she's all... As soon as Alyssa Milano sees Logan, she's, like, smitten for some weird teenage girl reason. Because this dude's clearly off his fucking rocker in the worst way. He's a dude, he's like in every other fucking scene he's in, he's grabbing his balls and being perverted about it. Or the way he points to Nicole when they're at that carnival or whatever. That dude's fucking freaky. I mean, a nice job to the actor, because... And that's just... He's just deeply unsettling. But the thing is that she just keeps driving this, and she's the one that's getting really, really into the nitty-gritty of the shit. And it's at that point you realize how much of a bad influence she really is, because she wants to be doing whatever Logan's doing, which is the really, really shady shit. But there's also that scene that's just a huge red flag, when during the Gary thing, David elbowed her in the eye and gave her a black eye, and she's, you know, freaking out about all this. And Alyssa Milano, her very best friend, is there by the pool, you know, painting her nails and all that, and just says, oh, so he hit you. It happens. And you're like, oh, okay. This is how Nicole got this far. This is how Nicole got as deep into this shit as she's in. Because she has friends like this. Being this, you know, poor, impressionable 16-year-old girl. Now, mind you, 16 is still, you know, old enough to really be making your own decisions and realizing what the bad shit is and what bad directions you're going. But mind you, she's also a young girl that's falling in love for the first time. And somebody who's been through all this, who seems as experienced as her friend here, just not good news. But I mean, it is hard not to sympathize with her. I mean, she did get herself into all this, but she's also just... She was young and she was trying to live life, and now she's being run off the road by David and smacked by her and threatened and all that. It is hard not to I mean, it is hard to not be completely... It's hard to not be, you know, sympathetic at least a little bit to a girl that's found herself in this position, no matter how much of her own fault it is, because these people... this is a bad fucking place to be. I think that's another reason this movie shines so much, is when you think, you know, teenagers getting involved in mischief and one of them might be crazy. There's a lot of shitty movies out there that show you this. This movie really, these people they get involved with, David and his crew and Logan, these are really fucking, these are dark, dark places. That these people are, and that they bring into this family and this girl's life. When you just look at this climax and the way we've gradually built to this point, to where we get... David teases us with his backstory, and Steve looks into some stuff. We don't know what the fuck the others are doing. Logan, God only knows. The others, it's hard to say, because they seem more just like minion types. But still... The fact that because they seem to want to be here just to kind of, you know, destroy the house or whatever. It seems like Logan's probably bloodthirsty, and we know David wants to kill some people while he's here. Mainly Steve, probably her stepmom. But then there is, and I really like the way this climax goes, where, I mean, it is basically everything gets out of control, let's just throw everything plus the kitchen sink in. Ending, but still, there's a lot of suspense in this scene, and there is a lot, just the terror of it in general, is really overwhelming in a good way, because you look at them and you just think, oh, these are just, you know, 5 dudes, what are they gonna do? But they're really, really menacing here with what they can do. I really like that effect, where Logan's outside with this part of a tree he's found is like he's using as a battering ram that he's hitting against the door. And him rhythmically hitting that against the door trying to get in kind of becomes a bit of a soundtrack underneath all the shit that's happening in this. I really like that effect. And then there's the moment when we keep building up Larry, the security guy that's at the gate. And we realize that he's eventually going to be taking part in this. And because we've seen a movie in our life, we know he's probably not going to make it. But what I really liked that they did here was they kind of took that cliche and turned it a little bit, because when Larry pulls up, everybody else has kind of been taken care of, and it's just David and Logan here. And they seem to have been caught, because David's going to try to talk his way out of it, but then no, boom, Steve appears, and Steve says, I'm putting an end to this shit right now. He lays out Logan, he punches David, and it's like, holy shit, I think we just reached our climax. And they actually kind of believably make you think this is it. And that David and Logan are going to be taken away. And then that's when we learn that one of these motherfuckers has a gun. It took us this long. It took them this long for one of them to pull a gun out. So yeah, that's a guy that's probably been in a dark place, because he killed Larry like it was nothing. So God knows what he's done too. But we know what's about to happen to him. And that's when I want to get to. Before that, there's also I do love this final thing here, this final confrontation in her bedroom, where it's where it all took place, and it's well, for starters, there's the irony, you know, of her stabbing him with the peace pipe. That's abundantly clear. But the thing about this scene I'd really like to mention is it's one thing where I've criticized, like Unlawful Entry comes to mind, where all these 90s thrillers ended the same way. These good people who were normal and have happy families and just all their thing, they have the dog, had the dog and everything. And then they just kind of, they're able to kill. Just like that. I mean, I know it's self-defense, it's hard to tell what you do, but all these 90s thrillers end the same way. These normal people kill. They kill the bad guy, and with no other resolution, the movie ends. Every single time. And while you do want to think that, I don't know, it is just way too satisfying to knowing how he's felt through this whole situation, and how David has built up to this. That one turning moment when it's been, David's trying to play up, he's all innocent even though Steve knows, and there's finally that one turning point when he turns into, when he goes full animalistic and starts beating himself after Steve leaves him, and he has that turn where he says, he's acting innocent and innocent and innocent and innocent, and then suddenly there's that one turn where he says, you know what, Steve, you're really not a faggot. And from then on, it's like, it's on. There's that, there's the car thing, and the note with the note with it is worse than what he did to the car itself. And we just build this back and forth and back and forth. And Steve, you know, destroying his house with the Chucky doll. They had to throw that in because it's Universal. Point being, is there anything more satisfying than when Steve has a dresser thrown on top of him, but is able to push it off, grab David in a rage, and launch him through the window onto the rocks to his death? It's like, you know what? I actually commend the movie for just rolling the credits there. That's exactly what they did. So, I honestly don't fault the ending. I know, you do wonder, where the fuck are the other guys? I do wonder about that as well. Because they're still running around somewhere. The dude with the drill said he was going to go to the hospital. I'm not sure what happened to Nobby. I think the last time we saw him, he was trying to break through the window. But anyway, the last thing I do want to get to, though, it goes along with this. And that is, yes, there is another death in this movie. Actually, kind of two, indirectly, that do make me wonder where this is going to go. And my question when the credits rolled was not, what happened to the other guys? It was, what's going to happen to Toby? Toby was a very normal kid. when this movie started. Like I said, he just got so warmed up to his new dad that he actually called him Dad. And that's happy. And he's got his dog, Kaiser, he's got the little whistle and everything. He's got a sister that he fights with, and most of the time they just play video games and have fun and everything. But in the last hour or so of his life, before the credits rolled, he saw his beloved dog decapitated, and he straight up killed a dude. Like, once again, could have been self-defense. I don't know, the dude's gun was empty, but I'm sure he was going to come at him anyway. So Toby's instinct was to back his ass over and brutally crush him to death under the car. I do wonder, I'm almost surprised that this did not get some straight-to-DVD sequel. Like, even Freeway got a straight-to-DVD sequel where it's like, what the fuck is Toby feeling right now? I'd really like to know this. Especially, and not even the whole his dog got decapitated and he straight up killed a dude. Kind of this whole other thing going on. This kid managed to survive his own funny games scenario, more or less. Like, I want to know what happened to him after the credit roll. I feel like, for the most part, though, like, Nicole will be a little more hardened because of what she's been through now. Like, her innocence has been taken. She saw her dad launch her first love through a window onto the rocks to his death. But she loves him for it because that's how fucked up situations got. I don't know. It does certainly leave him questions open, despite taking that 90s, let's just end it right here when the action ends thing. But yeah. So anyway, as I'm saying, this is surprisingly really well made for the kind of movie it is. And like I said, I understand if people just see it as very generic and very, you know, everything else of this genre. But I thought this kind of went above and beyond and really kind of took the stuff that we know, but somehow made it really, really strong. With these really strong characters and the build-up and just the way it's crafted in general with all those other aspects I talked about, the technical aspects. I actually feel it's a really, really damn good representation of the genre. I think it tops Fatal Attraction, actually. And that could just be me, but like I said, for the most part, people seem to see it as dated, like a 90s movie or whatever. I was talking to a dude that's from Cincinnati, and he says that apparently, I don't know if it still is, but at one point the movie was like really popular there, like at least in the last couple of years. The movie still had like a really strong following in that. I don't know why that area specifically, because I'm pretty sure the movie is set on the other side of the country, but... yeah, its fans are still out there, but I think for the most part it's pretty dismissed. But I always thought it was really damn good. It was one of my favorite movies as like a teenager, and I haven't been a teenager for like 8 years, but I still think it's pretty damn good and really well crafted, and does everything that it does really well. So that's my take on it anyway. But as far as Swimfan goes, okay, so I remember seeing the trailers, and then I actually saw it when it came out in theaters. I think I still have my ticket stub around here somewhere in a jar. I keep them all in. And, yeah, so what we do here is okay, yeah, there's no getting around that. Like, there's really not a whole lot in Fear that seems particularly dated apart from just how 90s it feels. I mean, like, even in the scenes where Steve's trying to get a hold of her, and they say, like, you know, oh, you can always, you know, text her or call her because she's got a cell phone. You know, Nicole, even if we were in present day and Nicole had a cell phone that she could text or call from, if she was out with David, she probably still wouldn't answer it anyway, and Steve and everybody would be in the exact same position they were in at the time. Swimfan, on the other hand, is like the You've Got Mail of stalker movies. It's very... Yeah, so it says something that, obviously the title written here looks normal, but like in the trailer, I actually remember the trailer really vividly, all 15 years ago it was, where at the end of the trailer the title was typed out, and the A in fan was the at symbol. So, just to give you an idea. But it starts off, and yes, it is very generic, very fast. We open and there's like ominous cello music that's kind of foreshadowing of her character and what she's where she comes from, or at least where she appears to come from. And then we jump forward to Jesse Bradford with happy music playing, like, you know, happy pop music or whatever as he goes about his day. And we see he's got the perfect life. He's got the mom, he's got the friends, he's on the swim team, he volunteers at the hospital, he's like the all-American kid. Not really when we get to know him, but at the start we're supposed to think he's the greatest thing ever. And he's always the helpful guy too. But the thing here is that and it's worth noting real quick, when you look at the technical, like if you go past the cast list, if you look at the technical credits of Fear, you've got like, you know, Brian Grazer's the producer, James Foley, who has already had established talent, directed it. It's got a Carter Burwell score. When you look at the technical credits of Swimfan, the only thing you'll notice, as far as names you might recognize, is the executive producer is Fisher Stevens. Yes, he is an Oscar winner now for the documentary The Cove, but at this time, like, the only connection I think he had was he and Jesse Bradford were in Hackers together. When he played the Plague, you know, the hacker that went around on the skateboard that was the villain. Yeah, he's the executive producer on Swimfan, and that's the only technical credit you'll recognize. That's, whatever that tells you. So, obviously, he meets Madison, who is Erica Christensen, who I don't recall seeing since, like, The Banger Sisters and The Upside of Anger. And she was Michael Douglas's drugged-out daughter in Traffic. She appears, and even though Jesse Bradford's already seeing Sherry Appleby, and they're very nice, they're having, like, you know, romanticism going on in the truck or whatever, and they seem lovey-dovey and all that, and then Madison just appears, and she's like, hey, I need help with my locker, and then I'm in your life forever now. And there's really, the problem with this character is that it's really hard, like with Fear I was talking about, you either as an audience member sense it immediately, or there's something about that person that at least grabs your attention. And maybe they're able to sweet-talk you the way they are the other characters. But the thing here with Madison is there's really no way to gauge her one way or the other. She's just kind of a blank slate here. When she's supposed to pretend to be one thing, when she's actually the other, I'm not really seeing either one of these things. Because she keeps calling him by his first and last name. And there's just such a... that's just something that annoys me. I just thought I'd bring it up. But there's still, like, a real inconsistency here. Because there are times... in the performance itself, she's not a bad actress, but it's this thing where every now and then, like, really, like, very rarely, you have to look for it like it's fucking Waldo, but it's in there every now and then, where there'll be, like, a subtlety or something, or just a way she says a line, where you kind of get a glimpse that maybe this character has something beneath their surface. Something that's not necessarily evil, but something that's intriguing, you know. But for the most part, it's one of those cases where it's getting to the point, it gets to the point very quickly where we're supposed to see her as clingy and potentially dangerous and not trustworthy and obsessive. But she's never really, she hardly ever reaches that point. And it's never in a case to where we're absolutely, you know, terrified of what she's gonna do. Because she's just there. A lot of the times where she's supposed to be, like in Fear, when David's just kind of hanging out in the crowd, or he goes to her school or whatever, or he's lurking from a distance, and it's kind of like, oh, this is not good, this guy is fucking trouble. Her job, her stalking in Swimfan is to just kind of stand where he is sometimes. And they go to the same school, so it's not near as threatening as it is in, say, something like Fear. Because for all we know, maybe she's there for a different... they're both gonna be at school all the time. Maybe she's just standing in a place he happens to be in by accident. It doesn't have to be a stalker thing until she makes it a stalker thing. And, of course, and when she finally does get to those moments, though... while there is rarely an occasion where you're like, oh yeah, I kind of see there might be something in there, other times you can't help, you can't imagine it for a second. You cannot buy any of this whatsoever. That she is capable of any of this. Really, the main problem with this character is that she's too dull to be a psychopath. And then when he seems so in love with Sherry Albay's character, he tries to fucking make up for it later by saying, "Oh, I fell in love too young. I wasn't expecting to fall this hard in love so soon." Oh, fuck you. It's very... So he loves this girl so much, but it's like they've known each other for like 2 scenes when she seduces him. And there's really nothing to the seduction. She is not near seductive enough to believe that Ben Cronin here would just cheat on his girlfriend just like that. This all-American motherfucker here would just bang her in the pool just like that. Where it's, there is some stuff in here, they get some decent shots, and there's a decent edit in there that I like, where she leaves her book of music or whatever, her notebook in his truck, and we're led to believe that she did it on purpose. But this reveal goes that he looks down and he sees something, and then we cut to the book, and then we pan up and realize that the cut we're looking at of the book is actually him later, and this is on his bed, and instead of taking it into her, he kind of held on to it. I do kind of like that edit, and then there's stuff like the shot where he's in the pool when she's just there watching him, and we pan over and she's there, and then we pan back and she's gone. And it kind of takes on that, like the first, when Ryan Phillippe attempted to seduce Reese over here in Cruel Intentions, the scene kind of reminds me of. But I mean, for the most part, this is all... well, for starters, this editing I was talking about, where it's kind of nice in instances like that, but then they go fucking crazy when she does, to their credit. I don't know. But it gets to a point to where, after this seduction has taken place, once again, she's not... Even with this pool thing, I still don't find her seductive enough to buy that this supposedly unbreakable relationship would just be broken after 2 seconds with this girl, but that's what the whole movie wants us to believe in. Otherwise, it wouldn't take off. It could not go anywhere if we didn't believe this. So we just have to. We have no choice, is what the movie is telling us. What I'm getting at with this editing thing is, after this seduction takes place, and the pool scene takes place, I feel like the editor, either they traded him out for somebody else who did not know what they were doing, or they just said, you know what, we don't fucking care. Do whatever the hell you want. We're not even going to give you any context. Here's some shit, play with it. And you're making a thriller in the early 2000s, so keep that in mind as well. So, what they have done is, every time, for starters, this swimming scene, when he's having flashes of them fucking in the pool while he's trying to swim to show that he's distracted. Okay, it's a little obnoxious, but okay, at least it's for a purpose. But then we get later on into the movie, and I think, to their credit, I think it's supposed to symbolize, when the editing starts to get really rapid and weird, is when she's, like, snapping. When she's, like, changing her mood real quickly. But the thing here is that it's when people are just standing there, or when they're saying mundane words, the editing, it's like the DVD is skipping. Because it'll happen, and it'll happen again. And then it's especially bad when she's in the car with Josh. It gets, like, it's like, are you being experimental? What the fuck is this? How you are handling this? What director would look at this editing job and, number one, may have seen it over the editor's shoulder and said, yep, do that, or, if not that, saw it and approved it and said, here, producers, what do you think of this? And then those motherfuckers said, let's put this in theaters. As it is, right here, with this shit. I don't know. Like I said, maybe it was an early 2000s things where it's like, oh yeah, this makes it feel visceral, this makes it feel unsettling, or whatever. But no, I just keep forgetting that my DVD is not scratched. I don't know, yeah, I know, the question probably remains, why have I watched Swimfan on DVD more than once? Why do I own this copy of it? Some questions you just don't ask, okay? So, and then, to its credit also, there are some scenes in there that can be quite jarring. or a scene that can be quite jarring. Josh's death scene always kind of hit me in an effective way, even though it's the turning point for kind of where the movie doesn't really return, because this is where it goes completely off. Because for starters, she's just always hanging around. She's always, bugging him, and then she's always standing in places he happens to be standing in. She leaves flowers on his locker. She goes to his house uninvited and is nice to his mom. And then just boom, she fucking kills a dude. And not like, oh, I poisoned his tea. Not like, oh, I shoved him down the stairs. Nope. We are supposed to assume she beat him relentlessly in the head with a wooden baseball bat until he fucking died. And then she kind of... I don't know how the fuck this works. I guess he was in... Because he comes in... Jesse Eisenberg comes in. He gets into the pool. I don't know, was Madison waiting on standby with a bloody, beaten-to-death Josh, just waiting for Ben to come and take a swim so she could effectively throw him into the pool and he could run into him? Well, first, she doesn't look that strong. I mean, this dude's an athlete. Remember that she's dragging around dead. Does she somehow manage to subdue enough to beat him multiple times with a bat that has no blood on it? But okay. just a little tiny dents in it. But it's clear she fucked him up. But still, I don't know. But that's not the only incomprehensible scene. What we also have is what's up with the truck keys thing? Because I know you want to do, like I was talking about with, Nicole, get me a Coke, or turning the clocks around. Just little mundane shit that goes, oh, this person might not be trustworthy. I get doing little mundane things, as I just said, but then there's this truck bullshit that I'm just not sure of. So, okay, so she's in the house with his mom, and then when she storms out, his truck keys are missing from the hook that he just put up there when he walked in. And then, at some point, while she was in the house, while he was there, she took those keys, and then she went outside, and she took his brake thing off. And then somehow went back in the house and put the keys back and then left. For starters, this is a lot of effort for no fucking reason. And secondly, a whole lot of effort to do what she did. Or what she didn't do. Because what she did was jack fucking shit. I don't know what that was. I don't know. I seriously feel like there was something missing there. But, and yes, there's still, we keep throwing in the dated qualities too, like the hard rock soundtrack when some shit's gonna go down, or even when shit's not going down, when they're just swimming in shit, is worth, this hard rock soundtrack. I remember one of the things about, the trailer was that Stupefy, who was it, Disturbed, I think is their name, was the trailer song for this movie. I don't know. When you've actually seen the movie and you're not just watching a trailer, you kind of wonder. It's like, I feel like Madison's supposed to be a little more hardcore than she comes off as. Like maybe if we actually saw the scene where she beats Josh to death, maybe some of this would be a bit more believable. But all the hardcore shit being off screen, and even some of the, like, sending him naked pictures, or just bugging him all the time, or doing the thing. I guess we're supposed to assume she's not wearing underwear under that skirt when she's standing there when he comes up swimming. There's just nothing here to buy, oh, by the way, I mean, I guess you could say, maybe it's to throw you off guard, where it's mundane, kills a fucking dude, brutally, but I don't know. I'm getting as incoherent as the movie is, but anyway, there's another dated thing would be, we're doing like the whole email thing, the email stalker, where it looks more like somebody could watch the computer stuff in this movie nowadays if they didn't know any better and probably think they're watching a movie that's supposed to take place in the era of like war games or something. There's that thing that she keeps messaging him on that's like a pager, only he gets like written out messages on it. This device, I'm going to assume, is so dated that I can't even identify it. I was around in 2002 just fine. I cannot tell you what the fuck that thing is. But I guess it was around for a second. So anyway, as I was saying before I totally got off track, was after Josh dies, the movie goes off the rails and never returns. Because it wants to get complicated now. It wants to give us Madison's backstory. It wants to tell us what triggers her in a way. All while she's running down his girlfriend. And there's this whole thing with the cousin that James DeBello plays. And but before we go into that, at Josh's funeral actually is where this shit starts. That cop that I don't think we ever see again, and if we do, he's too insignificant to remember. When it's like, oh, by the way, I got stuff, I got warrants, I got evidence, I'm totally gonna put you away forever, kid. And it's like, what the fuck? When did this movie become this? And how so quickly? I know she's been setting him up for a while, but I mean, who is this fucking cop guy? It's just suddenly seems to have some vendetta against Ben Cronin now. He's gonna take him down and all that. Now, mind you, we learned that Ben has a history, but we'll get to that in a second. Another thing is, Jesse Bradford can be a strong actor. He was, like, his big breakout thing was a Steven Soderbergh movie called King of the Hill, where he is, a kid that basically, in one way or another, loses his parents one after the other, and then basically has to live in this apartment by himself. It's an incredible movie. You really have to look for it. So he's definitely got the talent, and we know he comes from it, but this scene, there are a few, but I mean, nothing quite stands out as this scene, and this whole parking garage scene actually is where the shit totally and completely hits the fan for good. I know the cop in the cemetery kind of already did that, but I mean, we do this whole thing with Madison's boyfriend, who's like in a coma, and well, for starters, we don't even, with the way we've seen her, we don't even know if this is a real boyfriend or not. I guess there's enough people around. I don't know. Because her cousin even says to Ben, he's like, well, I won't say anything. You don't have to be nice to me because you're seeing her and everything. And he's like, what the fuck? I am not seeing her. So, yeah, if we're going on his information, I guess we don't know who Jake Donnelly or whoever his name is. He could totally be another Ben. He may not necessarily actually be her boyfriend. I guess that's up in the air. Maybe we're supposed to think that. I don't fucking know. Because the movie is so vague up to this point at the shit it's throwing at us. But anyway, we do this whole thing where we have to do the taped confessional cliche. In the most roundabout fucking way. Where we get the cousin to dress up in her boyfriend's clothes and just assume that she'll see him there, and then she won't say, hey, you, and then stop him or say, hey, stop that guy. She'll silently follow him into the parking garage, and then just confess everything while she's trying to kill everybody with a scalpel, and then, oh, there's their friend with a video camera. So, it just gets dumber and dumber, and we're not even done. This is a false fucking ending. So, after Madison has gotten arrested, they handcuff her like, okay, she's clearly insane. It's very blatantly now in everybody's face that she's fucking crazy. And she was swinging scalpels at people and confessing to murders and all that other stuff. So what do? They cuff her hands in front of her, and they just stick her in the car with a dude back there with her. And then, and then we're supposed to buy that while they're at some railroad crossing, she is able to kill 2 or 3 cops inside of a car and escape while she's handcuffed. It doesn't matter that they're cuffed in front of her. She's still fucking cuffed in some way. But I don't know. There's too much stupidity to even... I don't know. But let's go back and look at this from the very beginning. Oh wait, no, there's one more thing in the climax. Yeah, that whole, oh, I can't swim thing, where it's kind of like, you see that stuff in movies like this, where it just seems like something so incredibly blatant. Like almost like insultingly blatant. But so she gets in the water, she's like, hold on, I can't swim. And immediately you think, well, I know where this is headed, but wait, is it really that simple? Would this movie really, really be that easy to see where everything is going to go? Well, it answers that question. But anyway, let's go way back here to the very beginning now. As I was talking about, he's supposed to be in love with Sherry Appleby. He's supposed to be all about her and everything, and this is the one true love of his life. This is why he makes all the decisions in his life. It's based on this girl in his life. Now, what happens in this movie from the time that he and Madison fuck in that pool to now is all put on Madison. They do have their breakup scene where she slaps him, and his friends are like, "Oh no, what do you? Oh," and then that's it. But then obviously we get to a climax, and he's gonna have to save her life. She's already been run off the road and almost killed, and then she was almost killed again, Elle Driver style. But then Ben always comes in and saves the day. No, it's I did forget that she switched the pills. That's a case where maybe that was our transition to she fucking killed a dude, but it doesn't matter. The point here is that everything bad that happens is on account of Ben Cronin's dick. Because the thing here is, there's really nothing she does that's extremely, she doesn't really force him into anything. Everything is perfectly fine. Like, he can tell her to fuck off, he can tell her to do this, he can say, I have a girlfriend, don't do this and don't do that and all that stuff. Because the reason all the bad stuff happens is because she has the dirt on him that they fucked in the pool. Which is on him. I know, and because it really didn't even take that much. She changed into a bathing suit, she got in the pool, and she, like, kissed him. And it happened so fast. There was no even attempt. He was completely and totally seduced from the get-go. To which point, if he really feels the way he claims to feel to her, to his actual girlfriend at the end, he probably would have just said, well, shit's gone down. Like, even in the scene when she pops up when he gets the naked pictures, it'd be like, hey, look what Madison's sending me, she's fucking crazy, look at this. No, he tries to fucking hide everything and just dig his hole even fucking deeper until Madison's fucking killing people. And it's hard to... Sometimes it almost seems like the movie might put that on him. But the way we go and where we end up, it just leaves such a bad taste, Because... Okay, let's go to the ending. When she's been run off the road, and she's sitting there in bed, she's just fucking glaring at him because she's like, this is because you're a dick, man. I am here because you just could not help yourself. And now you're sitting here trying to tell me, but it's because I didn't know how much I was gonna love you. and so she's just kind of like, ugh, she's really fucking dark. So Madison's response to this is to take her, strap her to her wheelchair, and throw her in the water to drown her. And then we get our normal thriller ending where it's like, I don't care what you've done, it doesn't matter. We're okay now because you saved my life. I don't know. Because your life wouldn't need saving if it wasn't for, I don't know, the dick he couldn't control. Because I kind of like that she's actually really just... She's just there for that last few seconds after Madison drowns, when it's everything's happy now, and he's got the girl, and they're gonna drive off, and it just ends really quickly. The reason it ends so quickly is not because it's doing that 90s thing I was talking about where it just abruptly ends after the villain has been killed. The movie ends really quickly because she was gonna turn to him just as he kissed her hand right before they cut to the credits and was going to say, you know what, it's great that you saved my life and all, But I mean, really, the reason I was run off the road, the reason I was at the bottom of the pool, the reason all this shit happened, the reason Josh is dead, the reason that old man almost died, the reason all this shit's going down, your mom got knocked out. She hit you with one of those plastic fucking trophies. It's, oh, what the fuck's that gonna do? But still, it apparently worked. All of this happened because you decided to fuck her in the pool. Why the fuck am I sitting here? This is over, by the way. Like, Duncan, you saved my life. I will give you that. But I mean, still, the only reason this happened was because of that. Fuck you. And not in the good way, either. Not in the way that you fuck Madison in the pool, by any means. So, and there's even more. There's more. We learned, by the way, really, really fucking late, I guess so the audience won't turn on him. It's like, oh, by the way, he totally used to be on drugs and shit. It's like, oh yeah, that's something we probably could have known quite early on, but it's like over an hour in when he's already done the bad shit that he's gonna do. And then there's also kind of the thing where it's like, you see the people he kind of kind of like with Alyssa Milano and Nicole, it's kind of like the people he's influenced by, where it's like, yes, it's certainly tragic that Josh was a young athlete and was killed so brutally at such a young age. When he was a douche, but I mean, still, that's a brutal murder. And he's really just a kid still. He's still in fucking high school. But I mean, this is the guy that Ben considers his best friend. And we learn right off the bat that this guy's a fucking fucknut. Because of that scene where her cousin is walking through the halls, and he goes all jock on him. And he's like, hey, you fuckhead, or whatever. He didn't say that, but basically that. He basically just acted like a bully towards him. And then he's like, he tries to justify it. He's like, that guy's fucking crazy. I'm the guy who just antagonizes people violently for bumping into me by accident in the halls. That guy's fucking crazy. And this is the guy he calls his best friend. This is the guy he hangs out with. The guy that is the jock bully type. And they just basically hang out and talk about who they want to fuck. Yeah. So, I don't know. It feels like all a big ruse at the very beginning when we're getting Ben's life as the hospital volunteer and the star athlete and the guy with all the friends. And it's like, it would make a lot more sense if Jason Ritter's character was his best friend. But Jason Ritter's just fucking hanging out there. Like, and he's just like, hey man, like, I'm kind of somewhat here for you, and, I have to kind of be here to be... Normally, I would be the best friend character, but because I guess it would be too sad if I died, we had to make the very best friend the jock bully dipshit. The dude, Josh, I feel like, he's like, if Sebastian Stan never had a career, this guy might be in his place. I don't know, I've always thought that for some reason. But anyway, I think that about sums up Swimfan. So, it has all that stuff, but at the same time, it is definitely, if you're like into this whole, you get a kick out of like these cheesy stalker movies or whatever, these cheesy thrillers or whatever, and movies that are just like really out of date that you just love having a laugh with, I mean, it's fucking made for that. I mean, that's the answer to that question of why the fuck I have a DVD copy of Swimfan that's actually been in there more than once. But, I mean, it really takes the ridiculousness to a whole new level, almost to the point that it's kind of impossible to not at least be a little entertained by it, even if that's not always a compliment. But yeah, Fear, on the other hand, I do feel is legitimately well made, and just actually a really damn good movie, quite honestly. So yes, that's there you go. I have no idea what I'm going to do next week. The movie that comes out next week, I think, is King Arthur, which there won't be another one, so I guess I'll have to. But and then we'll go into Fargo again, and by then I'll probably have come up with another one of these if the interest is still out there. So yeah.